Take two.
Oh, I've got the mic. Can I ask a question? I got the conch. It's more a question, I guess, for Bob and Louis. Both of you touched on it. We're talking about reinventing the system or looking at alternative systems. I think maybe it's skirting around the fact that we have to disestablish certain structures, looking like the IMF and World Bank. And if you're talking about, you know, a whole economic system that's based on growth, where profit is the yardstick by which success is measured, and I think a lot of people would maybe be in agreement that's not really the best system. But if you want to disestablish things like the IMF or the World Bank or current corporate actions, you said it, Bob, you're going to be taking on the US military, and countries are going to defend these things and kill people to defend them.
I'm doing that now.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if letters to the editor are going to be enough, and without really putting a call to arms out, just wondering if maybe other sort of stronger measures should be advocated.
Well, I think people on the streets see the answer. Jeanette made that quite clear, that politicians will respond to 50 to 60,000 people. I once had a conversation with her about lignite mining down in Southland, and she said, how many people would it take to change the government's mind? And I said, about 10,000 people. So if you had 10,000 people marching on the mine site in Southland, then the government would take notice. And you know, just as sort of round numbers, that's about half the university population. So it is possible, but you need that sort of numbers. And I don't see, you know, you were talking about, you know, call to arms and, you know, students and action and so on. When I was a student, I wondered how I ever got any work done because we're protesting so often. We had anti-Vietnam marches, anti-apartheid marches and anti-nuclear marches every second week. And we had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people marching. This is in Australia, but I believe it was the same here. Tens to hundreds of thousands every week, or every few weeks. Okay, I haven't seen any marches except for the one in Auckland of a comparable size for probably 20 years. So, you know, maybe us lecturers work students too hard. Is that the problem?
Yes. Yes.
You should have time off for protesting. I don't know.
I'd probably just say a couple of things on that. I think the first thing is a bit of a slap on the hand to your generation, all due respect, Bob, for this constant mantra about, like, our generation was just incredible at marches, and you guys are so useless, because I don't think that that's a very constructive message to give to youth. And I also don't think it's a particularly accurate message. I think that marches are quite passé for our generation, like just walking down the street and holding a placard. That is true, but I think that you have to work within the context with which people operate within. And I think that young people are passionate about these issues, but saying you're not marching, therefore you're not doing good work, isn't the best message to pass to people. I think there are ways to involve youth, and I'm not 100% sure what the most powerful of those are, but I'm certain that it's important to keep like a constructive slant on the potential to do that. And that may be true, but a vote at the ballot box might well. The second thing I'd say is on the issue of the IMF and the World Bank. I think that those are large questions, and I think that sometimes it's easy to get caught up in trying to think about how to take on the US Army, whereas you'll probably just arrive at the right decisions by focusing on the things which we have control over now. So I know that may seem like a soft answer, but the answer is that whether or not the IMF is a flawed institution isn't something which any of us have the power to have direct control over. What we do have control over is a bunch of influences on our national government, and I'd focus the action there. So that's a slightly different stance from what we heard coming out, but I suppose it's to put the other side to it.
Just a small point then. Do you think Mubarak would still be in power in Egypt had people not marched?
And they also don't have a democratic system in Egypt. So if we have a government which is refusing to listen to us at the ballot box, then maybe we would need to reach that question. But I think for now there's the opportunity to exercise our power in a democratic way, and if that fails, then maybe we can go and tear down some buildings.
Hey, very interesting philosophy. I have some deep concerns actually about what you guys are proposing as Generation Zero, and the main concern I have is that you're rehashing all the tactics of the environmental and socialist left that apply in an environment of growth. They're tactics that work when people have time to go out on the streets and go and protest. There are also tactics that have achieved some gains, but consistently not given the global gains that, Bob talks about. And yet, here we are tonight talking about the same things we could have been talking about with slightly newer technology 30 years ago. So that's the challenge. I don't think our philosophy goes deep enough, and I'll tell you why. We are treating the climate problem and the energy problem of this world, we're treating it as a problem. Problems have solutions. Invent a new technology. Put a new government in place. Boot out John Key. I think we should do that. But this isn't a problem, this is a predicament. Predicaments don't have solutions. If they have solutions, they're not immediate. So we need to be thinking about adaptation, we need to be thinking about power down, we need to be thinking about other things. And once you put your philosophy on that level, a whole lot of other things come into action, and some of them are actually quite positive. So that's the concerns I have about this. I just would hate to see this thing set up to fail. And this probably doesn't make me very popular tonight, but there's another message. Think of this as a predicament, not a problem. Anyway, yeah, thanks.
No, I think that's a good message. If I understand what you're saying that maybe political change is a bit of a black hole, you'll pour energy into it, and that change won't come out of it. And so you need to question, as we were talking about here with the IMF, the more fundamental assumptions behind the system. Is that roughly accurate?
What I'm saying effectively is that psychologically, if we go out and build a movement, put all our energy into a movement, and then have the movement not even achieve, 1% of what we wanted it to do, we haven't prepared ourselves to be particularly resilient for that. I'm saying psychologically, we need to prepare ourselves to be effective movers within a new future, and that's a future of less energy. If we are prepared in our own lives, then we can go out and do that campaigning, because whatever happens, we're better than the other bastards, effectively.
Yes, so I think what that comes down to a degree is the balance between individual lifestyle change and political change. I don't think that those require a trade-off. Generation Zero isn't trying to give people a universal solution. All it's saying is that one aspect of what you can do is to vote, and I also agree that there are a lot of other movements, the stuff from Transition Towns, the stuff from 350. There are a lot of movements which are doing other valuable work. And I think to the extent that politics is a black hole, at least you can say that on the facts of this election, it looks like there's potential to make a significant difference. Sure, it's not the full answer, and it's never going to be a complete picture. You'd be silly if you thought you could solve the climate issue with one campaign. But I think that there's a very low cost to doing this, and it doesn't require us to sacrifice other things. We can still prepare ourselves psychologically and put our efforts into voting. It doesn't mean that we have to put everything in this election. It could well be that this election is a complete failure, but that doesn't mean that this campaign's been a failure, because it still stimulates that debate. So I think we should probably leave it there and let people get out of here. Thank you everyone for this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure, and sorry about the little hiccups with Skyping, but we enjoyed your patience. Cheers.
And I think it's one last thing. We should ask Bob how he's feeling right now.
Yeah, a bit ambiguous here. I'm not sure whether I'm cheered up or not. I guess that the problem with such movements is that there are a lot of opinions, and it's very difficult to move people in one direction, and I think that that's shown here a bit tonight. I think that if we're going to solve these problems, we're going to have a lot more people moving in the one direction. And thanks to Ground Zero for putting this on, sorry, Generation Zero for putting this on. It's a Freudian slip, and let's hope that they're not at Ground Zero when the shit hits the fan.
Thank you.
Final thing. Sorry, Bob. Final thing. We're meeting at 5 p.m. in Clubs and Socks. If anyone's keen to come, I'll book a really large room because I'm sure people are bloody inspired tonight. On Monday, 5 p.m. Clubs and Socks. See you there.